I'll just check again to make sure everybody can hear me all right, since I'm at a different mic now. Is anyone having louder? Okay. Do you all hear me all right now? All right. Thank you. In January of 2018, my 18-year-old son, Vince, who's back there, and I spent a week in the surreal city of Dubai staying with my cousin and his wife. They'd been living there for a while, and we knew they were moving back to the US soon, so we wanted to catch them before they left. About a month before we went on our trip, I asked my cousin to send me a list of recommended activities so we could look it over and decide what to do. He sent a neatly organized list, categorized and bulleted, with downtown, the tallest building in the world, Burj Khalifa, and Old Dubai, the art galleries in the Al Fahidi neighborhood, and desert, a camel farm, and then there was miscellaneous. I forwarded the email to Vince without really reading it thoroughly because I thought whatever he wants to do, I'll want to do. We're going to have a great time. Vince looked over my cousin's recommendations, and his number one, by far, favorite activity he had chosen was from the miscellaneous category: Skydive Dubai. I guess I should have reviewed the email a little more carefully before I forwarded it to him. And not only was he insistent that he wanted to do this more than anything, but he had done his research and concluded that Skydive Dubai was an excellent operation, perfectly safe. What parent would permit their child to jump out of a plane at 1,500 feet and fall through the sky at 120 miles an hour? That was not happening. Disliking was shrieking. And when I feel the degree of resistance that causes disliking to shriek, it's a prompt to be curious about what's going on in my mind. I know from my spiritual practice that our suffering is directly proportional to how much we resist physical and emotional pain and challenges. The intensity of our suffering can be understood by this equation: pain times resistance equals suffering. Pain is defined as sensations in the body that hurt or experiences that provoke difficult emotions like jealousy, fear, sadness. And resistance is the disliking. It's all the different ways we say, I don't want this to be happening to me. Jon Kabat-Zinn, scientist, writer, and meditation teacher, popularized the practice of using mindfulness to address pain. He defines mindfulness as awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose, in the present, non-judgmentally, in the service of self-understanding and wisdom. So mindfulness enables us to train our minds to manage our automatic liking and disliking so that they do not dictate our experience. Kabat-Zinn describes physical pain as having three parts: sensory, which is how the body experiences the pain and how the nervous system interprets it; affective, which is our emotional response to the pain; and cognitive, which is how we think about and how we judge the pain. He teaches that the affective and cognitive contributions to the pain can be lessened by changing our relationship to the pain. We suffer less if we open to it, if we pay attention to it, instead of doing everything we can to make it go away. Being curious about it enables us to distinguish between the pain and the suffering, and then we have some agency to change the experience. A research study that illustrates this uses the cold pressor test, which is when a tourniquet is wrapped around the subject's bicep and their arm is submerged in ice-cold water. Because circulation is cut off, the arm gets extremely cold. So to deal with the pain, some subjects were instructed to distract themselves, just think about other things, while other subjects were given some mindfulness training, strategies of paying attention to the sensations of the pain and being with it as non-judgmentally as possible, watching their emotional and cognitive resistance to the disliking of the pain. The subjects who used distraction strategies were better off in the first few minutes, but it was unsustainable. Once they couldn't distract themselves anymore, they had nothing. Whereas the mindfulness subjects were able to last a lot longer, keeping their arms in the ice water. Cold showers are a type of mindfulness training. I'll call it discomfort training. By choosing to undertake an experience that we're habitually or reflexively averse to, we're training our minds to see how disliking has a hold on us. As Dolnick writes in this morning's reading, cold showers have freed me from the prison of unexamined preferences. He continues, in those moments before you step into the cold stream, disliking will invariably begin to shriek, absolutely not. And if you can summon the strength to say, thank you, that's very interesting, and then proceed to step into the water anyway, you will discover something. The cold water will not feel great, but if you can bear it for a few seconds, unclenching your muscles, relaxing your grimace, you will notice as you begin to soap up that disliking has fallen asleep. Standing fully under a stream of cold water has in under a minute been downgraded from an all-hands emergency to a shrug. And once you've seen this fact clearly, that liking and disliking are voluble fakers, the whole world blooms with possibility. In Buddhist psychology, we understand the mind to have a reflexive reaction to every single sensory experience, either liking, disliking, or neutral. And these experiences are minute, so we have these all day long, over and over. Being curious about these reactions and giving them some space so we can see them can free our minds. Of course, we tend to avoid discomfort, to reduce irritation in our lives. So we spend a lot of time trying to make things just right and what's erroneously called getting into our comfort zone. But what happens when we stay in our comfort zone? It shrinks. We become less and less tolerant of difficulties. We have to be constantly vigilant to uphold the delusion that we can stay in the comfort zone. And we pay the price with fear and with anxiety, and we isolate ourselves. Mindfulness training with discomfort helps us build our tolerance for difficulties and brings our awareness of our mind's shenanigans into the light. When American poet Jane Hirshfield was a full-time Zen student for 3 years, she and her fellow students would get up. This was the usual morning routine. They would get up at 3 a.m., they would splash very cold water on their faces, and they'd go off to the meditation hall. In her poem, A Cedary Fragrance, she refers to this time in her life. Even now, decades after, I wash my face with cold water, not for discipline, nor for memory, nor the icy awakening slap, but to practice choosing, making the unwanted wanted. In choosing, she is replacing her habitual reflexive resistance to the shock of cold water with an invitation to remind herself that it is simply a sensory experience and she can respond to it however she wishes. In practicing this every day, she is reinforcing her awareness that she has the power to choose her attitude about how she responds to the cold water. She is training her mind to see disliking and liking by making the unwanted wanted. The Tibetan word chinlab is usually translated into the word blessing in English. In Tibetan, it means to bring about, as a result of an experience, a transformation of one's mind for the better. It creates a brightening of the mind. The blessing of a cold shower enables us to know ourselves better and therefore grow into the mindset in which we suffer less from the anxiety and loneliness that results from our resistance. When we practice this by choice, we create a laboratory for ourselves to see our reactions of disliking. And by virtue of choosing the discomfort, we start with a positive inclination. We give ourselves a head start on the resistance. Discomfort training can prepare us to face the physical and emotional pain that we do not choose, the inevitably difficult changes that are forced upon us in various degrees in our lives, from a noisy neighbor's party to a very difficult, serious medical diagnosis. When we have not chosen the discomfort, our disliking reifies it. It makes it into an enemy. And this is our natural reaction. Some of us are going through or have been through agonizing illness, debilitating, relentless grief. Of course we resist. It's overwhelming. We can begin working on these challenges that are forced upon us with small-scale emotional and physical pain. And I'll call this tolerance training. We can see how much attitude matters when we get a shot, for example. When we're children, we put up all this resistance to a shot. It hurts, so we try to wiggle off the table, we try to scream, we try to stop it somehow. But as adults, we don't resist. We know there's sensory pain to it, but we also know it's good for us, so we manage it, we tolerate it. Tolerance training is about catching ourselves in a disliking reaction to a rainy day that ruins our plans, to standing in a slow-moving line, to stubbing a toe. On our way to becoming grumpy or angry, we notice disliking exerting control, and we interrupt the momentum. Catching a cold is the perfect opportunity for tolerance training. Spiritual writer and teacher Stephen Levine writes this: each time you get a cold, use it as an opportunity to soften around the unpleasant and investigate how resistance turns into pain. And how resistance turns pain into suffering, the unpleasant into the unbearable. Hear yourself muttering in complaint and self-pity. Pity arises from meeting pain with fear. We've been conditioned to withdraw our awareness from the unpleasant. But when we attempt to escape from pain, we feel a sense of helplessness. Tolerance training teaches us how to take back the power from the disliking that's forced on us. And discomfort training is a way into the tolerance training because it enables us to get hopeful that the shift can happen. We can see that it's possible. Because I was familiar with discomfort and tolerance training, my mega resistance to Vince's request to skydive provoked curiosity. I quickly learned that Skydive Dubai was, in fact, one of the safest places you could skydive in the world. And yet that did nothing to allay my fear. This indicated to me that my fear was actually not justified, it was irrational. And when the resistance persisted so strongly, I began to see that it was not just my worry about Vince jumping out of the plane, it was the fear of doing it myself. Here was an opportunity for some high-octane discomfort training. It was going to take some fierce preparation for me to allow Vince to jump, but both of us jumping was a whole new project. I spent the next month, doing mindfulness practices to become familiar with my disliking, my fear. I revisited the safety statistics over and over. But still, I'd wake up in the middle of the night in a panic. What am I doing? I have 3 teenage children. But instead of turning away from the fear, I opened to it. I explored it. And then I could see little signs that it was transforming. I was highly motivated because, after all, this was a voluntary exploration of discomfort. I knew that if I could work with such powerful disliking, then I could work with a lot of other aversion. So by the time I heard the instructor say, "Ready to jump? 1, 2, 3, I was elated. Not because of the thrill of stepping off the plane's ledge into the sky. I was elated because this was the moment of proof of my mind transformation. I was fortunate to have this extraordinary opportunity for discomfort training. The preparation was relatively easy compared to my ongoing efforts to work with jealousy, resentment, but the blessing of skydiving gave me the confidence to persevere. When we manage our disliking through discomfort training and through tolerance training, we prime ourselves to handle the difficulties that come along in our lives. We feel less helpless. We feel less fearful. We give our energy to genuinely coping instead of resisting and isolating ourselves in our comfort zones. For Dolnick, the blessing of a cold shower changed his entire disposition toward the outside world. When we take steps to reduce our own suffering, we're more patient, we're more compassionate, and this naturally flows to our friends and family, our beloved animals, strangers whom we encounter, to all beings. Blessings, peace be with you.